How far will 7 days of consistent work get me in Blender? Truthfully, I now have more questions than answers, but hopefully you learn a thing or two along the way. I knew I couldn't cover every aspect of Blender in 7 days, so I decided to focus on a specific aspect, which was getting better at rigging and animating humans and sculpting monsters. To structure it, I split it into 3 projects: the floating man and the tunnel monster. My idea for the first project was simple. A man floats through an underground tunnel, only to find a weird river monster. Let's jump right in. I started with a base mesh I found on Sketchfab. I used a YouTube tutorial as a guide for the hair, but mine didn't really turn out as good. It also had no simulation on it, so it looked super static. I then rigged my character using a Rigify meta rig. Rigify makes animation for beginners much easier since it has inverse kinematics built in. I quickly ran into my first issue, which was there were holes in the mesh. The easiest way to fix this is to remesh, which turns your object into one consistent mesh. The drawback is that you often lose detail or your PC blows up. My first remesh attempt left massive holes in the mesh because I forgot to join up the back. My second attempt was too high voxel size and my PC crashed. My third attempt worked, but the mesh looked absolutely terrible. I didn't care enough to fix it though because everything looks a lot better in Cycles. I found a suit on Sketchfab and sculpted it to fit my character. To rig it, parent the suit to the mesh using empty groups. Then select the base mesh, shift select the suit, go into weight paint mode, click on weights, select transfer weights, and change this to by name. In the shader tab, I like to boost my subsurface random walk to 1, because it makes the skin look way more realistic. Now onto the monster. I connected 2 elongated half spheres before remeshing. This gave me space inside the mouth to work. To be honest, I rigged it very poorly. The bone hierarchy was a mess. If I were to do it again, I would put the root bone a lot higher up near the neck. I used the decimate modifier to lower the poly count, but it completely destroyed the topology, so I would not recommend. For the monster texturing, I found this great YouTube channel which gave me a lot of tips and tricks on how to properly texture and add detail to a monster. I then appended my monster into the boat scene. I then downloaded a curved brick wall model from Sketchfab, and I used the array modifier to duplicate it multiple times. In the future, I would just use a texture for this since this was super high poly count in the end, especially after duplicating it 32 times. I left my water simulation to last since it was going to react with all the different animations in the scene. In hindsight, I definitely didn't give it enough resolution. It just takes so long to bake the higher the resolution, so I couldn't be bothered. And here's the final result. So I obviously had a lot of areas to improve. In particular, render quality looked terrible. It looked really noisy. I think that had something to do with the sample rate and maximum seconds per frame. Model quality. I think I have to start with a better human model and better textures and make sure I don't remesh it. I've heard MetaHuman and Character Creator are great for high detail human models, but I believe that those programs are only on Windows and I've got a MacBook. Monster texturing. I don't think I gave the monster enough detail. It looked very smooth and kind of boring. The water sim looked very janky in PS2. The chase and the lightning spell. My next project was a chase scene until the pursuer slows, pulls out a magic wand and electrocutes his victim. This one took me 3 days, the longest out of all 3 projects, for one particular reason, which we'll get into in a bit. I started by rigging both characters. I really liked the quality of one head mesh, so I joined it to a base body and covered the seam with a scarf. I definitely wouldn't recommend this, it's not versatile whatsoever. I downloaded an add-on called Geoscatter, which makes it super easy to scatter objects around your scene, though it is $150. Then I downloaded some Mixamo animations to retarget onto my Rigify meta rigs. For the pursuer's movement, I combined 2 Mixamo animations. To combine them, I imported both animations into Blender and copied the keyframes from one armature to the other. I then cleaned up the transition between them and then retargeted them to my rig using a free add-on called Rococo. I highly recommend you watch this YouTube video for more detail on that. Then came the absolutely horrendous part, the cloth simulation. I used the Simply Cloth add-on since Blender's inbuilt cloth simulation is not that great. After some troubleshooting, I thought I got it working, but every time I rendered it out, My cloth looked slightly transparent and I never worked out how to fix it. So my character ended up just being shirtless. If anyone knows how to fix this, please let me know. I'm absolutely dying. I added some VFX to the wand using this tutorial, and then I also added some smoke to the guy getting shot. I wanted to add fire as well, but it didn't really work because I initially didn't realize that the fire simulation didn't come with an inbuilt fire shader. You had to add it yourself. Watch this tutorial for an in-depth explanation on how to do fire sims. Debrief on this one, it definitely looked better than my first project. But on the Pursuer, the hair clipped through the head, which I didn't realize. I didn't know you had to add a collision modifier to prevent that. And the cloth simulation was a complete fail. Project 3, the island and the monster. For the final project, I wanted to revisit the first concept to see how far I'd come in 5 days. A man jumps off a boat onto an island, unaware of the massive monster behind him. I found a great free mesh on Turbo Squid, which came with great textures as well. I started by making a cylindrical open space with a tree in the middle. I experimented with geonodes to scatter leaves around on the walls. Don't feel too intimidated by geonodes. I was until I realized they're a super similar setup to the shader editor. For the walls, instead of using actual bricks, this time I used a PBR texture from Polyhaven, which has a bunch of free high quality textures on it. Pro tip, press Ctrl-Shift-T on your principal BSDF to import all your textures at once. I exported my mesh as an OBJ to Mixamo. This ensures the Mixamo armature rest pose aligns perfectly with your rig when re-imported to Blender. I used a child of constraint to automate the parenting of the mesh to the boat. Then I tried adding a hair simulation particle system with collision, but it was an absolute mess. It just blew up every time. In a separate project, I started sculpting my monster. Press this button to dynamically add geometry as you sculpt. Somehow my monster went from a dragon to the Angry Birds main character, but I just went with it. I tried using a multi-res modifier, then baking out the normals and the ambient occlusion, but failed miserably. Can someone tell me why this happened? And then I accidentally unsubdivided my mesh, so I lost like tons of detail. Upside, I learned how to manually create a roughness map, which allowed me to give my monster's beak a bit more shine. Lastly, I did the water sim, and this was the final result. Debrief. The hair simulation was an absolute mess, so I need to work on learning how to do that properly. Baking AO, normals, and UV unwrapping, also really bad. I need to practice that. And most importantly, patience. I gotta be honest with you, I was constantly just thinking about the outcome of these projects and I wasn't enjoying the experience of creating them. So I think in the future, I definitely need to work on that as well. And that's the end of the challenge. You guys think I improved or just stayed the same?